Okay, so this is a overview and interview with Zach, who is the owner and founder of the rock climbing business that we're going to be discussing today, that he's going to be opening up. And so, Zach, thanks for coming on today.
Yeah, likewise. Thank you.
Yeah. So, Zach, why don't you just start off by telling us, how did you get into the business?
Yeah, it's maybe a longer story for another day, but the short of it is
Sure.
that I got really involved in climbing in college. And in college, I was actually a biomedical sciences major with the intent to go to medical school. And I had taken my MCAT 3 times, kind of chickened out the first 2 times, and then scored it, applied, got in, and had this existential crisis of, if I go into medical school, the rest of my life is kind of predetermined. So I panicked, and I had an inkling of wanting to start a business. So I'd actually started my first business at 16 in high school. It was an apparel company. And we did actually quite well given what it was. And then my best friend and I started a record label in college that we eventually exited for the retirement sum of $50,000 when you're 21. And so I kind of always liked the idea of starting a business, and having been really involved in climbing, I ended up withdrawing my admission to med school, and I went to Dallas and managed a climbing gym for about a year, and just kind of put some of my theories to the test, learned the ins and outs of the business, and kept my ear to the ground on opportunities. And I just kept hearing Austin, Austin, Austin. And I was pretty successful with a pretty old rundown mom and pop business. I took memberships there from 250 to 750 in a year. So I had this opportunity in Austin and started I took a job with a biotech company to move out there and start funneling some money into the project. And eventually, after about 2 years of due diligence, figured out everything I needed from the building aspect, from the investment side, and was able to pull that project together, which is now currently known as the Austin Bouldering Project.
So you have this entrepreneurial bent. You came out, brought this together. So did you have ownership in that?
In the Austin project, yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, so there are 3 gyms. There's a Seattle location, an Austin location, and a Minneapolis location. Okay. And my ownership was in Austin and Minneapolis, and we were attempting to form an umbrella to have the 3 under a holding company.
Got it. And then do you still have ownership in that business, or did you sell it?
I do not. I had a full exit, I believe, December of 2018.
Okay, got it. So you sold out of that business, and what have you been doing since, kind of preparing for the next venture? Or
yeah, so I resigned from my role as CEO in 2017, and then held on to my shares because we had engaged KPMG to do a formal valuation while pursuing the umbrella company. So I wanted to wait until that valuation was in before I sold my shares. But after resigning in 2017, I spent 6 months doing some consulting, businesses large and small. And then I eventually took a full-time job with one of those companies called WeWork, and it was launching a series of new markets. So Las Vegas, Boulder, Colorado, Phoenix, Arizona, and Salt Lake City.
Great. And are you still with WeWork, or have you exited there?
I exited in November of 2000, and I want to say 2019, so about a year ago. Okay. And I exited to take a more day-to-day role in another business that a friend and I started. The same friend I started the record label with, he and I started a consumer packaged goods company that we're currently scaling.
Okay, great. And so, and in this particular operations, you're looking to do something that locally. And so tell me how the business works. What is the business? How does it function? Just 30,000 foot view on this, so they can understand.
Yeah, so at its core, this business is centered around rock climbing. So specifically, the type of climbing is bouldering. And the difference here is bouldering is very low to the ground relative to sport and traditional climbing. So sport and traditional climbing are what people typically think of with ropes and harnesses. Bouldering is a much shorter style. It's more powerful and dynamic. So your walls are typically not going above 18 feet. And the nice thing here is you don't need a belay partner. So it makes it a very individual sport, but also social because everyone is kind of on the same plane interacting with each other.
Hmm.
And then kind of behind the scenes, the value added services or amenities we offer are we also offer full locker rooms, a full fitness program. So we'll have a fitness studio with programming. We'll have a full weight room with cardio equipment. We'll have a yoga studio with programming. And we will also in this project have to start co-working. So like lounge space, but productive kind of informal co-working. There's no co-working membership. So leading to the next part of, I guess, that answer, the business model is really simple. They're really three product offerings, which are memberships, day passes, and punch cards. So that really caters to the frequency in which our users are coming. Memberships are a no-brainer if you're coming more than once a week. Day passes if you're coming once a week, punch cards if you're coming once a week. Day passes if it's kind of sporadic from time to time.
Great. And what, obviously you've done it in Austin and Seattle. What makes you pick this particular area? Why do you think it's going to be successful here?
It's a great question. So I think to distill it down to its simplest point, what we typically use in approaching this are more or less three factors. So the building, the actual site, the population demographics, and kind of some of the ancillary parts of those demographics. So being age and income. And I can tell you from my own personal experience, I've evaluated probably a couple dozen, probably 3 or 4 dozen different markets, big and small, for my own projects, but other people's projects as a consultant. And so that has ranged anywhere from preliminary lease negotiations, building search, market search, to cannibalization rates and heat mapping. So looking at the site in Phoenix, I can compare it pretty intimately against the details I have from my Dallas project, Austin project, Seattle project, Minneapolis project, and the bouldering projects. We had actually conducted quite a bit of market research looking into markets like Chicago, Atlanta, Los Angeles, Denver, Boulder, Salt Lake City. So I'm also drawing off of all of that experience. And from what I've seen in Phoenix, to give you a few points or points of measure, the demographics compared to Austin, which was our least favorable market in terms of the three that we have existing businesses in, Phoenix is better than Austin. And Austin is a slam dunk of a project. The facility is also a better match to the project. So the facility is about 3,000 square feet bigger, has much more access to parking, is more centrally located, is closer into the highway, is in I would say, a more developed part of town where there's a focus on investment and resources. It's also opportunity zoned, and this project, unlike any of ours at the bouldering projects, would be an owner-operator model. So we've leased at all of our previous projects, and on the balance sheet, it has still always been a slam dunk.
That's great. So you're looking to do a location here. Walk us through some of the metrics of it. So you're going to buy a building. What is it, about 45,000 square feet or so?
Correct. It's about a 45,250 square foot building split between two buildings on about a 2.5 acre site.
Okay. And then how much is it going to cost you to build the whole thing out when all is said and done? Is it roughly $12 million? Does that sound accurate?
It's close. Yeah, I've estimated 13 million for the total project cost, and that includes a pretty conservative contingency budget for construction as well as operating reserves for the working capital.
So 45,000 square feet, 13 million. We want to do a 504 loan on this. So, 20-ish% down.
Yes.
Projection. And how are you going to structure this in terms of the ownership, and do you have an LLC set up, or how walk us through the ownership of it? What do you anticipate that?
I do. So I have an LLC, Phoenix Boulder and Co. LLC is set up. I have my transaction attorney working on formation documents, and this project is a little bit simpler, especially given that we'll own the building. So the documentation they're working on is a subscription agreement, a buy-sell agreement, an operating agreement, and then we'll probably have one restricted unit purchase agreement with a 4-year vest for one of the partners. And the company is set up very simply. So it's split into Class A and Class B shares. Class A shares will be the management shares. Class B shares are what the company will sell to raise the $2.6 million to put down as 20%. Class B shareholders will only have a vote when it comes to the sale, merger, or dissolution of the company and will otherwise be silent. Class A will run all day-to-day and decisions for the company. And that equity split is going to be 40% to Class B in exchange for the $2.6 million, with the remaining 60% being allocated to Class A, which will be split between myself, 1 to 2 partners, and staff profit sharing.
Great. And here's the age-old question the banker wants to know, is anybody going to have more than 12, 15% as an individual in the project?
No individual outside of myself will have above 10%.
And in terms of the, you personally, so you'll be the one guaranteed the loan.
Correct.
Are there any credit issues with respect to bankruptcy, foreclosure, short sale, lawsuits, anything that we need to be cognizant of?
No bankruptcies, no defaults. Yeah.
So we're good. We're good there. You obviously have the credibility. You've done this before. You've consulted in this. You've had a successful operation. I'm guessing that part of your projections are based upon what you've seen in the past. And you've obviously put those together as well. And so what is your timeline? A couple of things. What's your timeline? When do you anticipate this, getting under contract? When do you have to close, et cetera, et cetera? I know you said there's a little bit of a environmental thing that you're going to have to work through. So walk us through those, if you don't mind.
Absolutely. My rough timeline, I'm happy to share, and that lives in my head right now is, so I have negotiated with the current seller, I believe, a 4-month escrow period. So my timeline is to go into escrow by the end of this year. So if we can determine a pre-approval that will allow the seller to engage with us and finalize those negotiations, we'll go into escrow. We have the funds to go into escrow, conduct phase 2 remediation, and then begin preliminary programming with our architect. So my plan is mortgage-free and escrow to use those 4 months to program the space, build out the permit set, and conduct phase 2 remediation, which we'll pay for up front, work out in the negotiation of the building price. The seller's already expressed being extremely amenable to that. And then from there, I've budgeted 15 months to do the actual build out. I don't foresee that taking 15 months, especially we got it down to 8 months in Minneapolis. So that's accounting for some unforeseen circumstances. We are dealing with a new municipality. I have dealt with the municipality of Phoenix and Tempe working with WeWork. So I do have a couple inroads at the city of Phoenix and Tempe, but yeah, I personally, I always tend to take a more conservative approach. So I've approached every budget line item as the highest of the possible end that it could be, the longest that I believe it could possibly take. And then even on top of that, I've added contingencies to just account for any potential unforeseen circumstances that I haven't seen in my 3 dozen projects that I've done.
That's great. So question that everybody's going to be wondering, how has this business model fared during COVID? And do you anticipate any issues with that at all?
This is one that I love answering for investors because I have so much confidence in it, and because this is something that I have specifically dug in on it with regard to my consulting role. So I guess to make my answer really simple, there are 4 main line items that contribute to the expenses of the gym, running this gym, which is where people get deeply concerned is, are you going to, not necessarily are you going to be able to make money, but how are we going to know that you're not going to bleed money? So those 4 expense line items are credit card processing fees, cleaning fees, payroll, and rent. The nice thing is that when gyms close down, which some of them are still closed, I know the Minneapolis and the Seattle projects are actually closed at the moment. The credit card fees, the cleaning fees, and the payroll, for the most part, all go away. So the only real expense we're left with is rent. And that is one reason I decided to up the operating reserves on this project, is just to be out of an abundance of caution. But I know for a fact that I have been in touch with probably 24 of the 4 or so that I've done work with and that I know general managers of, and 50% or more of the paying members have remained paying members full price through the pandemic, because they want to see that these businesses stay open. They want to see the staffs continue to get paid. So even if you take your worst case scenario, which is that you're shut down indefinitely for a year, that cost is mitigated. For us in this project, it's very unique because we'll be an owner of that property. So we will still be accumulating some form of equity. The operating reserves are in place to see that through, but it's more likely than not, it will be a non-issue. And even if it is an issue, the protocols in place now at climbing gyms are pretty seamless. So we'll go into this knowing those protocols. There's also been a breakthrough in terms of, I want to say, technology. So 2 that I'll note here are air filtration systems. So I mentioned this to you, I think, on a previous call. We actually developed a proprietary system at the Austin Bouldering Project with a company called CamFill that resulted in about 20 air changes per hour. And they worked in conjunction with our HVAC system and our big ass fans. The second one is with, in Austin, I think when we were up and running, we were seeing an average of 1,600 people a day through the doors. And that's a lot of people holding on to climbing holds and sharing surfaces. And there's a lot of potential there. And so another unique system that's been developed that airlines use are electrostatic misters. So using green cleaners and these electrostatic misters allows the antibacterial product to last on the surface and kill bacteria for up to 30 days, depending on traffic. So that's another thing we've seen adopted by climbing gyms. That's something I personally advise climbing gyms that I've worked with.
That's great. So with respect to break even, or when you're going to see profitability, what is that? How long before you see turning a profit once you open up?
Yeah, so in our Seattle, Austin, and Minneapolis projects, and some of the more recent projects that I can remember doing, profitability happens in month 1. And I remember these details for Austin much more than I do for the others. But in Austin, I think we expected to do negative. I think we expected to lose $42,000 in our first month, and we ended up doing $150,000 in revenue. And we expected to go from losing $42,000 to making up to $200,000 across our first year in business. But we ended up doing $150,000 our first month, $350,000 our second month, and beyond that going forward.
That's awesome.
We smashed our year 4 aggressive pro forma expectations in month 3.
Fantastic. So yeah, I think that makes sense. So basically, do you have, this is my last question, do you have a contractor lined up at this point, or are you still in that process?
I do. It's actually, I've been in touch with a contractor that I used to build out 2 of the WeWork locations in Phoenix. And I'm drawing a blank on the name right now. I can see his name. His name is Shane, and I'm drawing a blank on the contractor's name. But yeah, it's a huge company. They're responsible for institutional projects around the country.
That's great. Well, that's great. Zach, this is really exciting. I know it'll be a great project, and so thanks for sharing the story with us, so we can understand a little bit more about what you do.
Yeah, I really appreciate the time. And I know we've talked about this before, but I think that the project is great. It will be successful. I have no doubt. But I think more of the intangible successes are something to be really excited about. I think the city is obviously focusing a lot of resources in the Roosevelt Road corridor, and I think this will drive a lot of attention and traffic. I'm excited to create what I think will be close to 100 jobs. But I think more than anything, I have been told time and time again that the Austin project is it is on a pedestal of community centers in the Austin area. And I'm really excited to hopefully bring something like that to Phoenix. So I appreciate you. I appreciate everyone who will hopefully listen to this for helping to make that a possibility.
Thank you so much, Zach.